So, I think we have discussed this yesterday regarding the outline of Indian history. So, I discussed about completing ancient India in one lecture, in which we are going to discuss the Indus Valley civilization and Vedic period and religious movements. In the next class, so we will cover the medieval part, which we will complete in the one lecture, and then we'll go with the modern history part. So after we complete the two lectures of modern history part, so we'll dedicate a class especially for the miscellaneous part. This miscellaneous part is very important to, uh, you know, you can say examination point of view. So in this, we will be discussing everything that we have learned in the previous classes of history. We will learn about dates, important battles, places, foreign travelers, committees, commissions, important Congress sessions, Governor Generals, and viceroys. So, so the topics which we are going to, which we will you know, we will complete in the miscellaneous part, will reflect in all of these. So, before we start the Harappan civilization, means let's have a revision again. Those who, I think some of you didn't attend the class yesterday. So we'll have a quick revision of that and we'll go uh, for the next chapter. If you see, this table is very important. This flow chart, which gives the timeline of ancient India, medieval, and modern India. So this is the brief timeline of Indian history. So which we will discuss at the very last of this all the history sessions, so that this will help in our quick revision. All right. So yesterday we have discussed about what nomenclature is. Can anyone explain me what nomenclature is in simple terms? Come on, guys. The most important part aspect of this session, is your interaction. So come on, you have to participate. Anything you have to just unmute yourself and be as free as possible. Just do not hesitate. Come on. Anything about nomenclature? Yeah, okay. Naming of unknown. And come on. It's okay. You can just, anything basic. You can just type it in the chat box or you can unmute yourself. All right. So nomenclature is, basically it means naming things within a particular profession or field. Right. So what is naming things? For example, let us say I have the sanitizer in my hand. Okay, let's not take this one. Let's take this something else. I have this. Uh, I will be giving it a, let's say, blue host, blue cap. All right. So, for example, I'm studying some things, or let's say I'm studying about plastics, or you know, particular, let's say, nanotechnology. In that any particular field, I'm studying this. So I, you know, I study its properties, its characteristics, and everything, and I name it. Right. So I will give this a name, according to its properties and its characteristics, right? So we can give it a blue host, blue cap, or anything it is. So basically, it is, an example of nomenclature is the language of scripture. All right. If you see, we have so many, inscriptions in temples and all of this. So, if, for example, if we find any temple, like, let's say, Venkateshwara temple, we call it Brahmi script or Brahmana script. So that's in that way we give it a particular name, right? Set of names used in a specific branch of learning or activity, as in biology for plants and animals, for parts of a particular mechanism, and etc. In the same way, in the archaeology, so since this Harappan civilization, or let's say these Harappan people, it was the first site discovered in 1921. So we have named it Harappan civilization. All right. So it is also known as Indus Valley civilization. It is also known as Indus Valley civilization, which is the oldest name of it. So we call it Indus Valley civilization. So basically, what civilization means? So people, those people who have migrated from, from various places. Okay, they have settled at one place. We call it Indus civilization because Indus is a river where people have situated on the banks of the river, right? In the same way, if you see it, Harappa, that civilization, the people who live on the banks of the river, that river is called Ravi. So we call it Indus Valley civilization. And the most appropriate name, basically in archaeological sense, in archaeological tradition, I have said earlier, because it was the first site discovered in 1921 by Dayaram Sahani. So the appropriate name are terms. In geographical terms, there is confluence of two rivers, Indus and Saraswati, right? Indus and Saraswati. So that is why we call it as Indus Saraswati civilization. So which is the largest concentration of settlement along the Indus Saraswati river. Basically around 70 to 80% of people have situated there. So in the same, yeah. So John Marshall, he was the first scholar who used the term Indus civilization. So Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, these are the two important capital cities of the Indus civilization. So we also have Lodhal and Balakot as important port cities. If you see the table here, Harappa, which is the site discovered by Dayaram Sahani in 1921, is situated along the river bank of Ravi, which is in the state of Punjab. So earlier it was Pakistan, right? And another important site is Mohenjo-daro. So Mohenjo-daro, the name Mohenjo-daro is the name of a small statue of a man. A bearded man, let's say, man with beard. Yeah, man with beard. Something, it will be something like this. Let me show you. Something, it will be. Oh, my drawing is terrible. So, can everyone see the drawing? Is it visible, guys? Okay. So this, just wait a second, struck. Yeah. So this is actually a small, statue of a man with beard. So whose name is Mohenjo-daro. Mohenjo-daro. So that is why we give the site name as Mohenjo-daro. So which is situated along the river bank of Indus. State is Sindh and the country is Pakistan. So Sindh is around same place, around almost the same place where Harappa and Mohenjo-daro is situated. And the first person to discover this site is R.D. Banerjee, Rakal Das Banerjee, in 1922. All right. So if you see one more, another important fact here is the largest site of Indus civilization is Mohenjo-daro, and the largest Indian site of Indus civilization is Raki Gai. So there is a different, guys. It's difference. The difference is the whole civilization. Mohenjo-daro will be the biggest one, largest one, and in particularly in Indian subcontinent, Raki Gai will be the largest one. So if you see the map here, so this is where Mohenjo-daro is situated. So let me do this. So is the map? Can you see the map? This is Mohenjo-daro, right? Yeah. This is Mohenjo-daro, and here this is Harappa. Harappan. So and Raki Gai will it's around here in Haryana. It's in Haryana. So this part will be the Sindh. Here it's Punjab, and this is Haryana, the present day Haryana. So these are important, this when it comes to outside of India. So Mohenjo-daro will be the largest site. So if you can see here, we have Lodhal in Gujarat. This is very important. Lodhal in Gujarat and Balakot right here in Pakistan. So if you see this carefully, just observe what you can actually see. This is the urban town planning. Okay, so this is Indus civilization. This is where earlier people used to situate here. This is a pool, bath. So you can see, right? So this is how they built with all the bricks and large bricks and in organized manner. So that is why we say this Harappan civilization is organized, and it is in urban. We call it as urban town planning. It is similar to urban. So where you will have, if you see this picture, let's wait. You see this picture, you see how organized the houses are, with proper roads, with the drainage system, and everything is like organized. So this is how we call it. This is why we call it as Indus Valley civilization primarily to be the urban town plan. So there are few important points to remember. As we discussed earlier, the largest site of Indus civilization will be Mohenjo-daro, and when it comes to Indian subcontinent, it will be Rakhigahi. And Harappans were the earliest people to produce cotton. To produce cotton, they were the earliest people to produce cotton. We can say like agriculture was somehow, uh, they used to practice agriculture very minimal. So an important ancient port city, as we have seen the map, it's Lodhan, and we know that how organized the cities used to be, which is primarily urban. All right, and if you see here, for let's say for any civilization, uh, for people, to communicate, to in order to to maintain their own identity, they will have their own language, they will have their own script, they will have their own community and everything. So in the same sense, Harappan script is the oldest script in Indian subcontinent. So Harappan script is something like that, which is, we cannot decipher. Means we cannot understand their language, their inscriptions. They had their different symbols and everything that goes with it. And the oldest deciphered script means deciphered script means which is understandable, which we can read, which we can understand what each and those symbols represent. So it is Brahmi script. So uh, that around India, around the northwestern part of India, there were some civilizations. Even inside the India, if you see the map, so there were also other civilizations, other people joining and making a civilization, maintaining their own identities. It has happened at many places, at four different civilizations. So we can say one is the Egypt one. The first, this is Egypt. This is, you can see, Mediterranean Sea, Arabian Sea. This is the Gulf region. Here we have, this is Africa, present day Africa. So this is the Egypt region. So if you notice here, we have River Nile, so which is the longest river in the world. So this is where people have, Egyptian people have situated here, maintaining their own civilization. They have situated along the banks of River Nile. So that is why we call it as Egyptian civilization. In the same way, if you look at the Arabian side, the Gulf region. So here we have so many rivers here. So this, we call it as Mesopotamian civilization. So we have Tigris and Euphrates. So these are the two important rivers which flow through this region. So that's why we call it as, Mesopotamian civilization. If you see here, in the same way, so we have Indus. and its tributaries here. So this is where you know Indus Valley civilization is situated along the banks of different rivers here. So and this is you know Chinese civilization. This is Yellow River, which flows in East China Sea. So this is where the Chinese civilization is situated. So these civilizations, they basically represent their ideas and their identities. Okay, this is how civilizations. This is how people started. What we call as social growth. All right. So this is where we finish Indus civilization and we come to Vedic period. So Vedic period is something very relevant and very important chapter of ancient history. This is a period where we have gone through various changes. In literature, arts and crafts, everything, our culture, everything was defined by what people did, what they have passed on to generations. Vedic period is something, you know a period of great social change. Okay, so if we discuss the main actors during the whole period, they were called as the Aryans. Okay, the Aryans. So guys, have you ever heard the word Aryan? Does anyone know what who are the Aryan people? Anything, guys? Any idea? No idea. Okay, so these Aryans, they were the people, particular identity. Let's say people of particular race. They have migrated to India, to situate in India, to live in India. They, it's a controversy regarding the origin of Aryans. So basically, Aryans, they are the people who have come from different places. Basically, they are related to Indo-European languages. So mostly the Iranians, they call themselves as Aryans. Okay. So if you see the name Aryan itself means the land of Irans, or say Aryans. So basically, these Iranians, or say the people who belong to this race, they called Aryan to be noble class. Those people who belong to noble race. Let's say higher strata. Okay, so this is how slowly, in slow manner, there has been so many social changes. Like we have so many varnas, we have so many hierarchies within so many castes and all of that. So this is what these ages laid the basic foundation for all of that. So these Aryans, so various scholars have agreed, they have also refrained from agreeing on their origin place. Some say they have been situated in India, they were native to India, and some say they have come from the outside of India. So there have been some scholars who said, like uh, Dayanand Sarvasi, Saraswati, he said these Aryans, they came from Tibet, which is around the southern part of China. Okay, and another scholar, Max Muller, foreign scholar, he says they originated from Central Asia, and most of them believe that too. Okay, and we also have another scholar who said they originated from the European regions, from Arctic regions, because as I earlier said, they are very much related to Indo-European languages. So these Aryans, when they arrived in India, when they migrated from outside, they spread to Indo-Gangetic plains. So what is Indo-Gangetic plains? So if you see here, let me draw. So sorry for the map, guys. So this is just an illustration. If you see, this is the Gujarat and Rajasthan, and this is the southern part. Okay, so this is where we call as Indo-Gangetic. This whole plains is Indo-Gangetic. So this Indo-Gangetic plains is a fertile place, very fertile. You know, you know what is the meaning of fertile, right? So what is the meaning of fertile? It's fertile land. You say it's an agricultural land. What is fertile? Anyone? You can unmute yourself. Come on, guys. Just do not hesitate. Even if it is wrong, no problem at all. Everyone is here to learn something. Come on, give me the answers. Yeah, rich nutrients. Okay, that's one aspect of it. And it will be really interesting when when all of you really interact to me. So that's why it will become more, or I don't know whether you people are enjoying the class or no. Because history is certainly a boring subject, so I don't know how many of you can understand this. So you have to participate. So a land which is suitable for farming. Yes, yes. So it's very basic. So yes, you're right. So this is the agricultural land. We can say that it's very fertile. It's very wet. So because most of the rivers, if you see Ganga, Yamuna, yeah, so many, and its tributaries, Brahmaputra River, so they flow through this region. So we call it Indo-Gangetic Plains. And this place and this region, it initially, it came to be known as Aryavarta. Aryavarta. So Arya are the people, and Varta is something related to place, their establishment. All right. So these were the first people in India to know the use of iron and brought horses with them. As you all know, there have been so many horses in India too before that, and that's is also some controversy because there have been some burial sites of horses at the places of Harappan civilization too. So some scholars they say that based on the evidences they found. So basically, they were the first people who know the use of iron, and they brought horses with them. And they brought horses with them. So this is significant um, when this becomes significant when we talk about use of iron because it is something uh, change we can say a change because of iron you can make tools for agricultural use and for hunting for anything that related to it. So that is why usage of iron and other metals also becomes very important in every age. So these people they had their tribal communities, their own political organizations, economy. They had the different economy. They had Varna system. This Varna system, which came in the later ages, and religion. So these two are important aspects of religion. So two aspects of religion. So, guys, can you say how many varnas are there? Anyone? And what are they?
Sir, four,
Yes, yes, four, right?
four varnas, sir.
Yeah, four varnas. Can anyone name them? At least whatever you remember, you can tell me. Come on. This is an
Okay.
hierarchy. Yeah.
Sir, and Rigveda, Samaveda, Adharmaveda.
No, 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 no. That is different. That is which comes in Vedas part. That is the literature part. I'm talking about Varna system. Varna system is something, in hierarchy, basically, let me write it. Something, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, wait, it's not clear. See, Varna system is something, it's in hierarchy, where in the first place we have Brahmanas, Brahman people, then we have Kshatriyas, then Vaishyas, Shudras. Okay, this is an hierarchy, BKVS. So Brahmanas, they call themselves to be noble, and after them, those who belong to noble families. I mean, those who belong to those who are the descendants of kings and related to their family, they were Kshatriyas. Okay, and these Brahmanas placed themselves above Kshatriyas, who were priests, who work in temples, all those kinds of people. And Vaishyas, who lived under the there, who had petty jobs, and like say they are not that noble considered to Kshatriyas. They had minimal piece of land. They had their own home, their agricultural lands. And Shudras, who are small workers. They are poor. They are poor people, who work under them. So this is the hierarchy. So we have been learning. We have been this is where everything that originates from like castes and different religions, different gotras, right? So this is in hierarchy we call it as Varna system, which developed in the later ages of Vedic period, right? So did everyone understand this? So you have any doubts here? Because we will be entering into Vedic literature here, which is something very interesting and different.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now, if we go into literature, this is a very important and very interesting chapter. So in Vedic literature, basically, as I said, in the Harappan age, or let's say in any age, even the stone man, they used to communicate in some or the other way. They had their own crafts, they had their own paintings, they had their way of own communication. Back then we didn't have any particular books to that grammar, or say like what we have today for different subjects and professions and fields. So like that, uh, in Indian subcontinent, we have faced, gone through this particular age, this Vedic literature, where there have been so many different changes. We have got so many oldest books, based on different professions back then. So this Vedic, something, this Vedas, and as you have heard, this Vedas, Upanishads, and Puranas, and all those, these are these terms. They are everything related to Vedic literature, right? So the term Vedas, generally these Vedas, they have been passed on to some generations and generations through word of mouth. Okay, through word of mouth. What is that? So when people write, either they say and they write, they make note of things, different. They make their own religions. You know, they mention about different gods like Indra, like God Agni, like Varuna, etc., etc. All right. So everything which is related to religion, let's say, or polity, or different kinds of songs, epics, and everything, it's combined into one literature. Right. If you see here, we can call Vedas be Shruti literature. There are basically two kinds of literature. One is Shruti literature. Shruti literature, and the other was is Smriti literature. So basically, what Shruti means is that, so in this particular phase, Shruti means all these Vedas, all these texts, all the all those works, they have been passed on to different generations through word of mouth, as I have said earlier. All right. So whereas in Smriti, this is a Vedic tradition, a tradition where literature, there are so many new things which are arrived from the Vedas, and from actually from Shruti literature, from Vedas, everything those. You know, so basically, Smriti tells us about certain rules and regulations of Vedic life, Vedic that period. Smriti literature is something we call as remembrance literature, so which is a tradition. That literature which is continued, and it has some new elements, apart from what Vedas or Brahmanas or Upanishads say. So first, if we talk about Vedas, so Vedas is the most important Vedic literature, the most important Vedic literature, and the oldest. So it is also called as Apaurushaya. So what is Apaurushaya? Apaurushaya is a term which means something which is, not handwritten but God given. Okay. So people believe that, these texts, these religious texts, you can say, or these works, they have, it's very, it's in a holy way, it's very sanctimonious. They are very important piece of works. They have been given by the God himself. Okay. And they are directly arrived from the God, but not handwritten. So that is why it is also called as Apaurushaya. Right. So there are four important Vedas. So we have Rig Veda, Yajurveda,
Samaveda,
Samveda, and Atharva Veda. Yes. So all these four, books, or we can, these texts, these works, they deal with different kinds of things, different kinds of subjects. They have, their own, you know, piece of art, or they refer to some gods, religion. They refer to so many things. They give us so much information that, which is, magical in nature. It will be about medicines. It will be about arts and crafts. So many things. If you see here, Rigveda, which is the oldest text, Rigveda here is the oldest text in the world. Oldest text in the world is Rigveda. So this is something related to Indo-European. Let's, we can call it as as I said earlier, because these Aryan people, there who were the descendants, they were related to Indo-European. So that is why it has some relevance with Indo-European language. So it is also called as the first testament of mankind. Okay, First Testament, something which is a sacred one, a sacred text. Okay, we call it as Rigveda, which is the oldest text in the world. So it is divided into 10 mandalas. So mandalas we can say like as in chapters. Chapters. So mandalas are nothing but there are 10 chapters in this, right? And the 10th mandala, the 10th chapter contains Purusha Sukta hymn that explains about four varnas. That explains about four varnas. Now, did you get my point? Right. So this is very important. In Rigveda, 10th chapter, which is called as Purusha Sukta, it explains, it further elaborates about four varnas as I have discussed earlier. Okay. So basically, the term hymn, what is hymn? So anyone? So basically, I have yeah. So basically, Rigveda is something just collection of lyrics. You can say songs. They are dedicated to so many gods. It's something which is sacred. Okay. So can anyone say what is hymn? What is called as hymn? Anyone? So you can just unmute yourself because most of the time I cannot see your comments. So no idea, guys. Hymn is something related to songs and praises. Okay, something related to songs. So these praises, or let's say something which is songs, slokas type. They are specifically they are dedicated to gods. So that is why we call it as hymn. So it is basically that the word hymn means dedicated songs or praises. Okay. So for example, if you see, how many of you watch ETV or some religious channels? All the time, in the morning time they play this God songs, some lyrics which particularly they are dedicated to God. So these are called hymn. This is hymn. Is particularly dedicated to gods. So now, Yajurveda is something a book of sacrificial prayers which further elaborates on hymns and rituals. So sacrificial prayers means again like it has different traditions and rituals people follow. So we have so many rituals, right? So all these rituals and traditions, these are mentioned in Yajurveda. And Samveda is book of chants, collection of melodies. So which is important to Indian music. All right, something which is related to music, those notes, chants, like saregama, you know, those kind of um, thing which is important for Indian music. So when it comes to Atharva Veda means a book of magical formulae, spells to ward off evils and evils and diseases. This is something, it's very unreal and it's interesting too, because we don't know if this kind of book, even is available in nowadays. So have you seen Harry Potter? Anyone? How many of you have seen Harry Potter?
Yes,
Harry Potter fans. All right. So if you have watched all the seven movies of Harry Potter, then you will see, in there are certain books, you know, there are also certain spells, which are magical in nature. Those wands which Harry uses. So many of the other students in the Hogwarts, they use that magical wand, right? They spell something, formulae, magic. and something starts flying and something, anything can happen. So that is what definitely all these magical spells and formulas. This is what is related to Atharva Veda, right? Now, another thing in the Vedic literature after Vedas is Brahmanas. So Brahmanas is nothing but it basically it explains about hymns, about different songs, praises of Vedas itself, and sacrifices and rituals. They are furthermore elaborated and discussed in Brahmanas. And the same way, Aranyakas is something, Aranya means, something which is related to forest. I think there has been a movie called Aranya. So how many of you know that Aranya movie? Rana Saranya movie. No. Okay, Aranya, something which is related to forest. Something which is related to forest. So basically, these forest people or the saints who live in forest, they chant, they live there. Students who live in, they learn, they practice, who live in forests. It is mainly written for them. Okay, this is called as Aranyas, Aranyakas, and the Upanishads. So Upanishads, I think most of you have heard this. So let me ask you a question. Uh, how many Upanishads are there? Anyone? These kind of, I think we have been, mm, maybe most of them are aware of this. How many Upanishads are there? Anyone, guys? No idea. All right, fine. So we have 108 Upanishads. These Upanishads, these are philosophical texts. These are philosophical texts. Something, which is, you can say, motivational, or you can say life changing. Such kind of texts, they are written in Upanishads. So it is also called as Vedanta. So in this, there is an important, chapter, Upanishad, which is called as Mundaka Upanishad. Remember this, Mundaka Upanishad, which mentions about Satyameva Jayate, right? Which mentions about Satyameva Jayate. So we'll discuss this particular part when we come to the questions point of view. Then you will understand what is Mundaka and what is Satyameva Jayate. So, this is, Vedas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Upanishads, and this is called as Shruti literature. So we have discussed Vedic literature so far. Okay, now we will be discussing about Smriti literature, which is a continuation of it. The later part of age, the later ages, they have continued, they have added new elements. There are so many new things in Smriti literature, which is a Vedic tradition. So, Smriti literature. So, anything, guys? Any doubts so far? Anything you did not understand? Anything? Come on, guys. Anything you have to tell? Anything you did not understand? Anything? Or shall I continue? So,
Yes,
unless
sir.
you don't give me answer, I think I shouldn't continue. So, I have to know whether everyone is listening or no. Right.
Continue, sir.
So, it's fine till here. Only two people are answering me, Vijay and Shiny Rao. All right. Okay. So if we talk about Smriti literature, it's something, mentions rules and regulations of Vedic life. This is after, Vedic literature. After all those Vedas, Brahmanas, and everything, we have come to Smriti literature, which is something basically everything handwritten. All right, these are also, they have been passed on to generations and generations. Right. So we have Vedangas, Puranas, Darshana, Vedas, and epics. Okay. So Vedangas are something, they are a substitute, you can say, they are allied with Vedas, limbs. So Vedas, Rig Veda, Samveda, Atharva Veda, they are just not limited to that their names, but it has so many things, so many wide concepts, so many things that have been added to later part of the ages. So these Vedangas or these sutras, which is called as Siksha, like pronunciation, Kalpa, which are rituals, Vyakaran, which is grammar, Nikruta, etymology, Chanda, which is metrics, Jyotish, which is all astrology. So these are all are part of Vedas. These are limbs of Vedas. Limbs means legs and my upper part of arms. These are, I mean, these are the main parts, of Vedas. Siksha, like its pronunciation. So all of these are learning materials. Okay, and when it comes to etymology is something which is, uh, you know, the words, the root words. The study of words, its history and root words. It is etymology. You know what is metrics? You know what is astrology. So when it comes to Puranas means old. So there are 18 famous Puranas. We know that there is Vishnu Purana, Agni Purana. So many things are there. Total 18 in number. And Matsya Purana, as you all know, Matsya Purana is the oldest Puranic text. Okay,
Yes, sir.
basically these. Yes, yes, yes.
Sir,
Anything,
the
Sam?
Matsya Purana, this is the some already we saw the Vikram movie,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Garuda Puranam.
Yes. Can you name the movie? I'm unable to recall.
Aparachituru, sir.
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
Garuda Puranam,
He,
some
yes, yes.
all
He
the
refers to, yes, absolutely. You're right. Absolutely. So he refers to so many. If you have seen this Aparichit movie, in that this fellow Aparichit, he refers to so many Puranas, religious texts, which as I said, it mentions about so many things. It has also mentioned about punishments, basically, which is very important aspects of hell. All these punishments, everything is written in these texts. He refers to these texts and gives punishments to criminals and all that. So if you have seen that movie, you will have a clear cut idea of it. So Matsya Purana is the oldest Puranic text, and Darshana is so it's not that important. You don't have to even remember it is something, schools of Indian philosophy which are called as Shah Darshanas. Definitely there are different schools of philosophy which are further segregated into different fields and all that. It's not an important that one. And when it comes to Veda, this is very important. Veda is something deals with specific type of topics. For example, if you see Dhanur Veda, Dhanush, which means art of warfare, arrow and bow. So Veda is something, if you see the Veda is something an extension of Vedas. These particular Vedas, Dhanur Veda, Gandharva Veda, Shilpa Veda, and Ayurveda, they specifically deal with these kind of subjects. Like Gandharva Veda deals with music. These texts, which are specifically dedicated to warfare, to music. Shilpa Veda, Shilpa, something which means architecture, statues, sculpture, that is architecture. And Gandharvam, something which is dedicated to arts and craft, then music and everything. Ayurveda, you all know Ayurveda is something which is related to medicine. So these are the main Vedas.
Yeah, everyone, just a second. In the WhatsApp group, I shared a trick to remember all the 18 Puranas. So just look at that after this class. So even though it is
Yeah.
not important, just look at that.
Yes, sure. Becomes very important. Okay. So this is under this. So Yajurveda, under that we have Dhanurveda, and it goes on like that. So in the next we have epics. All of you know Mahabharata and Ramayana. All of you know this Mahabharata. Can someone tell me who is the author of Mahabharata and Ramayana too? So these are called as Mahakavyas. The word Maha is something giant, big. Maha Kavyas. Kavyas, something written. These are epics, which are very long texts. They have so many chapters, so many, um, you know, philosophies and whatnot. So, can anyone tell me who has authored Mahabharata and Ramayana? First, Mahabharata. All right, yeah, Valmiki. Yes, absolutely. Great. So, Mahabharata is Vyas and Ramayana is Valmiki, right? So, in Mahabharata is the longest epic of the world, which has 18 parvas or 18 18 chapters kind of. So it is the longest epic in the world. And Ramayana is also it is the oldest epic in the world, very oldest, even before Mahabharata. It is also known as Adi Kavya, right? So longest epic becomes Mahabharata, and oldest one is Ramayana. So how many of you have seen Mahabharata and Ramayana? The whole Mahabharata and Ramayana. How many of you have seen or in television, or how many of you have read or something about these two epics? Anything, guys? So this is the end of Smriti literature. So anything you have to say or any doubts you have till so far?
We saw on childhood, but we didn't remember, sir.
Yeah.
It is
That's
a Doordarshan regularly Mahabharata.
I also remember, in that Doordarshan, some 90s Ramana used to play. So that's a really interesting one. Okay. So now we will be talking about religious movements, right? So after everything that has happened, everything really, so literature is something, it is happening every day. It happens each generation to generation. It just goes on. Even now, if we are discussing about epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata or say Rigveda or something, it is only because they have been passed since generations to generations. So, in the same way, the literature, the development of literature is something which is dynamic. It happens every day. Something or the other new elements will be. So that is why when there is an advent of science and technology and so many other things, there have been conflicts and controversies with so many people. People have formed different sectors. They have been divided. They have been fighting over all these religions. About its credibility, about what is truth and what is wrong and what not. There have been so many religious and social movements, so many changes that have shaped the history of Indian subcontinent. So if you see here, uh, Buddhism and Jainism is something which is, very peculiar topic. Religious movements. Initially, we cannot call it as religious movements. Religious movement we call because what we have perceived its preachings and teachings. If you see, Buddhism and Jainism, these are the two important religions. Even now, even today, we have so many Buddhists and Jains, across India, North India or Northeast parts of India. Buddhism is something, which is originated as an alternative tradition, to the excessive importance given to rituals and sacrifices in Vedic tradition. So people in Vedic period, in those ages, they have so many, so much hierarchy, these Vaishyas and Shudras, they have been degraded. This Brahmanical, this hierarchy has been become so much stronger over the years. And there was also an advent of, you know, something or the other new thing happened within the agriculture sectors, this agriculture and everything, which has, in a timeline, all these factors caused the rise of these religious movements. Something which we can say as an alternative to, all those traditions which people did not believe initially. All right. So, the same sense, Buddhism is something, it's a religion we call, uh, today's world, we call it a religion, something which is very considered to be sacred. It's founded by Gautama Buddha, right? So Gautama Buddha was a very normal person, like everyone. So later on, he's been given the title God because of what he did. All right. So his real name was Siddhartha or Sakyamuni, you can call, or Tathagata. So his original name was Siddhartha. So Gautama Buddha, also known as Siddhartha, he founded this Buddhism. He was a Buddhist. He believed in his own ideals. He had his own, you can say religion, not religious, but something which is unique to his own identity. He had his own way of life, living his own way of life, teaching and preaching to different kinds of people about um, his life, about, about certain rituals, traditions, what he believed and what not. All this constituted, the rise of Buddhism. So he was born in 563 BC in Lumbini, which is in Nepal. All right. His father was named Sudodana, was king of Kapilavastu, and his mother was Mahamaya, was the princess of Kosala dynasty. Right. So there has been, so even in that, in that particular age, there has been so many kingdoms and dynasties. They have been living with kings. So that's why I have said earlier that because of the dominance, Brahmanical dominance, because of that hierarchy, so there has been a rise of Buddhism. All right. So Buddhism was also divided into two main sects, Hinayana and Mahayana. So Hinayana and Mahayana is nothing but these, within this religion, within Buddhism, these people are nothing but these people who learned, who preach. So initially, Gautam Buddha, uh, we have to say Siddhartha. Initially, Siddhartha, who have, after enlightenment, we call him Buddha. When, after he left his home, in search of enlightenment, in search of way of life, in order to live ever happily ever after. And he has preached his way of life to other people. He has preached, his ideals to so many people across, India. So at one fine day when he was, meditating, you know, for people say for 12 years, under Bodhi tree, which is in Bodh Gaya in Bihar. So one fine day, he, out of enlightenment, he has gotten, the knowledge of the world. We can say like, that enlightenment, which is, something uh, extreme, superpower. You can say that, that kind of way. So Buddha is something which is enlightenment. The knowledge, that power, to preach, to have so much knowledge about life and everything that goes with it. So we call him Buddha. Buddha means something which is enlightening, something which is gives us, you something which is related to enlightenment, right? So the first Buddhist council was held at Rajgriha. So Rajgriha was the place where first Buddhist council was held. Okay, Buddhist council is nothing but Siddhartha used to go to various places. These councils were held under kings under their supervision, where they had to, preach their ideals and teachings, etc. So these were called as. So this is how Buddhism slowly came to be a religion. So people started believing that he's a god. He's a supreme person. And Jainism, in the same way, Jainism is something which is the oldest religious traditions. Jainism is much way older than that, which is the very oldest religious traditions in the world. So the first of these teachers, as it's Rishabha Deva. So I mentioned wrong here. It's Rishabha Deva, and the last was Vardhaman. Okay, so now Jainism is something, it's another religion, another sect of people who believed in their own ideals, in their own teachings. All right, they had their own way of life. So the first teacher was Rishabhadeva. We can also call him as Rishabhanatha. Okay, Rishabhadeva, both are same. And the last one who survived, is Vardhaman Mahavira, who is also known as the Great Hero. So, in the Jainism tradition, there is something called as Tirthankaras. Tirthankaras, as in like, these are, considered to be not as God but supreme people. Those people who had their own way of life. They had, their teachings as the same way as Buddhism. How Siddhartha used to go to different places and preach his ideals. The same way, Tirthankaras, these 24 Tirthankaras, according to Jain literature, there were 24 Tirthankaras. These Tirthankaras, they have taught and preached so many ideals of Jainism sect. Okay, so in the same sense, Rishabhanatha was the originator. You can say he was the first person who has a relation with the origins of Jainism. And in the same way, Mahavira was the last person. So he is also said to have lived in the 6th century BC as contemporary of Gautama Buddha. As you can see, Mahavira was contemporary of Buddha. So this is where both these religions, and there have been also so many other religions um, like Vaishnavas, and so many other things. Those who believed God Shiva and those who believed God Vishnu, they had so many conflicts. They were contemporary of this Jainism, Buddhism, and all these religious movements. They have been at a rise and conflicts with each other. So Jainism was founded by Rishabhadeva. He was the first Tirthankara, and Mahavira was the last 24th thinker. So in the same way, as Mahayana and Hinayana, in Jainism also, these two sects have been divided because they believe in their own, they live in their own thoughts They are completely, crazy people. I cannot say crazy, but they are something, like, believe in their own things. That is why they have been, due to some conflicts, and they have been divided into different sects. So these two sects are Shwetambaras and Digambaras. Shwetambaras are, if I have to tell you, let me tell you this. Shwetambaras are someone who remained in the north itself. These people remain in the north parts itself. So basically, they used to wear white coats. All this is not much useful, but this is just for information because it is interesting. So these Shwetambaras are the people who used to wear white clads like me, with a cape behind, like Superman, which is white in color. So these people remain in north. So that is why they are called as Shwetambaras. And these Digambaras, they are people who are naked all the time. So do you understand? These people believe that being naked is something which is a part of Jain tradition. Preaching nakedly, and these people remain naked. So that is why they are Digambaras. Okay, so they preach like that. So, and in the same way, first Jain council was held at Pataliputra. Okay, Pataliputra. All right. So this is, guys, this is religious movement. I have just talked about Jainism and Buddhism because these are the two important religious movements. And others, as I have said, there was Shaivism, there was Vaishnavism. There are so many small, religious movements that have been, that have emerged in contemporary with Jainism and Buddhism, and there were conflicts with each other because of their own ideas and because of their preachings. Okay, these were the two important religious movements. So, did you all get about Jainism, Buddhism, and Jainism? So, this is it. Religious movements. This. So next we are going to question and answers. Right? So anything so far? Any doubt? Did you got my point? Come on. Someone wants to something. Yes. Come on, guys. You can ask any questions if you have anything. You can be as weird as much as possible. No problem at all. Okay. Shall I'm continuing then. So we have learned about. Let me just go back. We have learned about Harappan and Indus Valley civilization. Different places, different sites, how people situated there, why people situated there. We also learned something about Vedic period. Who are these people who call themselves as Aryans? Why did they come to India, and how Vedic literature, got to its origins. And we have discussed Vedas, Upanishads, and Smriti literature. This is something an extension of Vedas, something which talks about rules and regulations. Which is an extension of Shruti literature. We have talked about Vedangas, Puranas, Vedas, some epics like Mahabharata and Ramayana. These are all nothing but these are all literary sources. They are the sources for today's study. So we can name it under literary sources. So these are nothing but these are archaeological sources. Sources is something that if we want to study something, we want sources, right? We want sources. Like if I want to study current affairs, I have to know the sources, online sources, physical sources, whatever it is. If I want to study GK, I want to know the sources. What are the sources? There are sources like classes, online classes, GK books, and so many other websites we have. In the same way, Sources is something like archaeological sources refers to all these um, physical archaeology, these excavations, these discoveries. That is why we have known about them. The same way it goes same with the literature. So we have also discussed about religious movements, various religious movements, Buddhism and Jainism, who founded them and why they have founded it and what caused it. And this crazy thing also we have learned, and now we are coming to the question and answers. Come on, guys, we have to do this very quickly, very quickly. I have to just answer it, you know, just within seconds. Come on, guys. It may be wrong or right, whatever it may be. I really doesn't matter. You're here to learn. Okay, doesn't matter it's right or wrong. Just give me the quick answer. That's all. So now tell me, Indus Valley civilization was discovered in which year? First one B. B. Okay. First one, can anyone? Okay, everyone. Okay. Okay. It's visible. So okay. B. I have got three answers, and I want everyone to answer. Okay. B. 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 Okay. Nearly 10 have got an answer. The answer, it's the right answer. The answer is B. And who discovered it? Who discovered it? The person, the name of the person who discovered it. Daya Sahai. Okay, Daya is right. And whenever I hear Daya, I remember CID. Come on, guys. Only one answer I got. Daya Sahai. So it's Dayaram Sahani. Okay? Dayaram Sahani. Dayaram Sahani. Alright? Dayaram Sahani. So Simran, did you get it? It's Dayaram Sahani. Okay?
Yes.
Okay. Alright. Great. So, which metal was unknown to Indus Valley civilization? Come on, quick reply. Okay, okay, very nice, fantastic, fantastic. You guys are fantastic. The answer is iron. Absolutely right. I think most of you have been attentive in the class. I appreciate it. The answer is iron. So there was gold, there was silver. There was also use of copper. As I've said, Aryans were the first one to use iron. So it was unknown to them. It's absolutely right. So, how many of you seen this in the movie called Mohenjo-daro? In that movie, if you see, you can find gold, silver, and copper. Yeah, just wait. Don't answer the third one. We'll go after understanding each other slowly, no problem. But we'll complete it quickly. Come on. Anything? Have you seen this movie called Mohenjo-daro? So in that movie, we and see the difference. Mohenjo-daro. All right, all right. It's an ocean's movie. It's great. So Harappa is located in the bank of a river. Yes, Ravi. And Indus is Ravi is the right answer. What about Indus? MJ. Wow. MJ, I like it. Absolutely, absolutely. Mohenjo-daro. Next. Indus Valley civilization was discovered by, it's Taram Sahani. Uh, Let me see. R.D. Banerjee. Come on. R.D. Banerjee was the first person excavator to discover which of the following civilizations. Come on, guys. R.D. Banerjee. Daharam Sahani, we can say it's Harappan civilization. Let's see. Yes, absolutely. It's MJ MJD. You can call it as. Next, fifth question. The site of Mohenjo-daro is located on the bank of river. You can just give the options. Yes, Indus is the right answer. Absolutely. Next, the site of Mohenjo-daro was discovered by its over, as you all know. It's R.D. Banerjee. Okay. Now we have seventh question. Come on, the most suitable name of Indus Valley civilization is. Okay, Simran has written A, Vijay C, B. Okay, we have difference here. B. Okay, we have difference of opinion. So let's go back. See here. Appropriate name is Harappan civilization. Right? It's Harappan civilization. In which case makes Simran, your option is right. It's Harappan civilization base. I have also said we have discussed that Harappan, we generally call it as Indus Valley civilization because of its continuity, because of we can say because of Indus River. Basically we call it Indus IVC as a whole. Which is become has become a common name for many scholars, and if you read some books also, you will notice Indus Valley civilization or Harappan civilization. So Harappan civilization is something, in archaeological terms, it is the most appropriate term. Okay, so Indus civilization is something. It's a common name. It's the oldest name. Okay, Indus Saraswati is something is goes it's in terms of geographical terms. Bronze time, it's not related. Eighth question: which of the following civilizations was not contemporary with Harappan civilization? Come on, guys. Eighth one. A. I want everyone to answer so that I know. Most of you have been attentive, but C. Someone has mentioned C. Shiner Rao C. Why do you think it's C? Just check the question once. Not contemporary. So it's Greek. So I have. Did you all of you remember the map? Right? We have also seen the map. We have seen Egypt civilization, Mesopotamian, which is in the Gulf region, and Chinese, which is in the China. So we haven't We have not talked about Greek civilization, which is much later. It's different from not contemporary with Harappan civilization. So Greek is the right answer. Is it all right, Shiny? Or see, once clearly, read the question and give me the answer. Rajaram, once just those who have, giving answer A, once read the question clearly. The answer will be C. All right, that's fantastic. Okay. If it is not India, then it will be Harappa. Okay. Or Mohenjo-daro. Or if it's Mohenjo-daro, the option is Mohenjo-daro, it will be Mohenjo-daro, obviously. So in India, it is Rakhi Gai. All right. Okay. So the 11th thing comes. Vedic literature is also known as dash. Come on, guys, we have to, be fast and be complete. Vedic literature. D, okay, and you can try elimination too. C and D. Okay, only one answer I got. D. D. K. And the answer is A. Shruti. Okay, Shruti, it means Vedic literature. Vedanga is something which is, it's in Smriti literature. Vedangas. Okay. So Shruti is something, as I said to here, Shruti is related to Vedic literature. And Smriti is an extension of it. Who founded or laid the basis for Vedic culture? Come on, guys. 12th one. Who founded or laid the basis for Vedic culture? B, B, B. All right. B, okay. All right. You're right. Absolutely. The answer is Aryans. Next, 13th question. Which of the following is concerned with magic spells and charms? Which of the following Vedas? Come on, guys. Come on. D. The answer is D. Absolutely. The answer is D. No, C is different. C is something, it's about prayers, sacrificial prayers and rituals. D is something I have given you the reference to HP. What is HP? What is HP? Harry Potter, guys. Right? Something which is related to magic. Right. Which of the following text is the oldest text in the world? Right. Answer B is absolutely right. Fantastic. So Manusmriti is something, it's related to law. So it's a law script, first law book. It's Manusmriti. Dharma Shastra is something, something which is related to Shastras and Sutras and all that, which is religious. And Mahabharata, as you know, it is an epic. It's the longest epic. Okay, something which has happened. It's not text kind of thing. It is a text. It is the longest text, but the oldest one is Rigveda. Okay. 15th one. Who among the following wrote Sanskrit grammar? No. The answer is C. It's Panini. Okay. The answer is C. Absolutely. The answer is C. It's Panini who wrote Sanskrit grammar. Okay. 16th one. The word Satyameva Jayate in the state emblem of India has been adopted from which of the following Upanishad? We have discussed this earlier, I guess. Yes, absolutely right. The answer is B. So Satyameva Jayate. So if you have noticed, what's our emblem? State emblem. It's an emblem with three lines, right? So we have one line here like this, and another like this, right? And we have Ashoka Chakra here. Okay. So we have two symbols here, one elephant and horse. With horse, yeah. So so this is where Satyameva Jayate is uh, inscribed. You know, we find this the this Satyameva Jayate, this small text on the emblem, state emblem. Right? So it is taken from Mundaka Upanishad. Next question. Which of the following is the earliest Purana? B. B. Yes, B is the right answer. No, Shaina Rao. Vishnu Purana. No. It's Matsya Purana. Matsya Purana is the oldest one. Next, how many Upanishads are there in Vedanta? Absolutely, it's 108. 108 ambulance. Next, Buddha means. What Buddha means? It's a very basic and important question, guys. Yes, yes. Absolutely. Fantastic. You guys are fantastic. It's enlightened one. It's enlightened one. Absolutely. Next, 20th question. Gautam Buddha attained Mahaparinirvana or enlightenment at. Come on, guys. Quick answers. 20th one. Kapilavastu, Bodh Gaya, Kushinagar, and Rajgriha. Come on. He attained the enlightenment at which place? Oh, okay. We have got so many different options. B. Yes. Absolutely. B is the right answer. Bodh Gaya under Bodhi tree, which is people tree. It's called people tree. Okay, Bodhi tree. So, where is this place? It's in Gaya. It is in Bihar. Where is Gaya? It's in Bihar. Okay, it's in Bihar. Right. 20th one. Who amongst the following is known as the Light of Asia? Come on, guys. Fast. B. B. Absolutely. B is the right answer. Next. Buddha was born at. It's B. Absolutely. So Kapila Vastu is where it's the, it's their kingdom. His father ruled. Okay, Lumbini is where he was born. It's in Nepal. Next. At which place did Gautam Buddha give his first sermon? Sermon means teachings, his preachings. Yes, I know. Most of you will be, no, I know. The answer will be B. Okay. Rajgriha is something, related to councils. But sermon is, first preachings, teachings. It is at the place called Sarnath. Remember this. Remember this. It's a place called Sarnath. Okay. Last question we have. In which of the following states the grand image or statue of Gomateshwara is located? Come on, guys. The last question. Absolutely.
Banu, are you done with the class?